Well, everyone, Jim Walsh with you on this edition of Jim Visits on an early Wednesday morning. And we have a very special guest next to us here, exactly to my right, Jolynn, and help me out with your last name, Jolynn.
Nagel.
Nagel, Jolynn Nagel, and she is the newly crowned Alice in Dairyland.
Yes.
And this happened on Friday night, right?
Yes, up at Ladysmith in Rusk County.
Okay. Alice in Dairyland has been around, I guess, for a long time. It's I can remember going back to when I was a kid when the first one came around. Had to be early 60.
Well, a little bit before that. I'm the 48th Alice in Dairyland.
48. Wow, that's
so it's a little bit before your time,
a little
and
bit
my
in there.
time too.
Yeah. Well, I guess you remember those things as being a kid and remember seeing a lot of them, and so you think that's when they got started. But
Right.
the big push was on. Alice in Dairyland has. It's not like most of the contests that they have nowadays. Tell us a little bit, first of all, what got you interested in becoming Alice in Dairyland and how you go about involved in becoming.
Well, I've been involved with 4-H and FFA activities for many years, and I've been able to meet many of the former Alices while they were Alice and afterwards. I guess I saw the Alice position as quite a stepping stool into the future to get me into my goals. And originally, when I had entered high school, I would really like to have worked in public relations in the agriculture industry. And as I got into more of my activities, like I said, with 4-H and FFA, I really set the goal as far as becoming Alice in Dairyland just because of the opportunities that it had to offer to myself as well as my future goals. And now that I've finished up my degree at UW-Madison, I'll have a degree in agriculture education and dairy science. And I'll probably teach after I get done. And that's what was so great about this Alice position, is that it is a real role of education, not only in the urban setting, in grocery stores and schools, but also in the rural setting too.
Okay, so it gets you that bit. You said you now have your degree from Madison. Going back through school, then, you must have been that change around, because I can remember going to school where the girls were only going to take home ec and the boys took agriculture, and that was it, right?
Right. And then actually, women weren't allowed in agriculture education until 1969.
Wow.
And so we've come full circle. And in fact, in Antigua, I was one of the first women to go through the classes, and now it's over half women. And I think that the curriculum that the classes offer has really changed too. It used to be all production classes, how to raise corn, how to work with cattle, and now we're seeing horticulture classes, landscaping classes, floriculture and boutonniere making, to aquaculture, working with the environment and taxidermy. And there's so many opportunities that you can really get involved with.
And it's a lot with it, and it's an open field that it needed it. It needed to have that break. On the other end of it now, I can remember going to school, and I think when I was a senior back in 1971, do we dare say that? That I can remember that was the year they turned around, they gave the opportunity for the girls to take the ag classes and the boys to take home ec, and they always thought, well, this is easy one, we'll take the home ec, and they found out it was the opposite way.
Exactly, and I think that women got the chance to get involved, and you really see a lot more people being involved with the industry, and it's not just a stereotypical farmer anymore. And in fact, there's actually more jobs available in the urban areas in the agriculture industry than there are in the rural settings. So you don't have to live in the small towns or the rural communities. You can work with animal genetics, you can work with forestry and tree maintenance, or you can do whatever you want. So many opportunities.
Now, as you start out your career as Alice in Dairyland, what were some of your expectations before it started? What did you think Alice was going to be? And now, so far, we're only going into, what, fourth day or so? Has everything come up so far that you thought of?
Well, I guess when I started looking back, when I first became aware of the position, I looked at it as more of a fairy tale image through magical eyes. Alice was always prim and proper and very much out in the public's eyes. And you said it, 4 days ago I was selected as Alice in Dairyland, and it really hasn't all sunk in yet as far as I am that role model and that public image of Alice in Dairyland now.
Okay. Now, what are going to be some of the responsibilities as Alice that you'll reign for the next year?
I guess the biggest thing, my goal for the year is to work with agriculture education and ag literacy. It's kind of like Project Literacy here, you know, people being encouraged learning how to read. I think people just encouraged learning more about the agriculture industry in all different settings, whether that's being at State Fair and working on food demonstrations or the Milk a Cow contest, working in the classrooms, and also people of all ages, like I said, in the grocery stores or even a senior citizen's home. That's going to be my biggest goal for the year.
Okay. As you go on and you look back, and we want to talk about the Jolynn Nagel story and get just a little bit so we can get people acquainted with that. Tell us a little bit about Jolynn from growing up and where she is right now.
Well, my parents have an 80-cow dairy farm up by Antigo, and my experiences in agriculture have all helped to shape and mold my activities, like I said, 4-H, FFA, Farm Bureau, and to help me achieve this position. Not that that's the only reason why I got this position, but when I left for college and I was heading down to the university at Madison, I swore I was never going to milk another cow again in my life. I was tired of getting up at 5 in the morning. And now that I had a chance to live in the big city life and experience that side of things, I realize I really enjoy Antigo and all that it has to offer, and a nice community. And I'm sure I've seen that here at Wisconsin Rapids too. But I think just working with agriculture just became so much more important to me too. I changed my major into that area. I was staying with dairy science, and that's what my future holds for me too.
Okay. Now that you mentioned a good question, I guess. As you said, you went from Antigo and you go down to Madison, and here's the big city. When you get down to Madison, as you go through school, what's it like the first 4 years, or the first 2 years or so when you get down there? Was it the big change?
Yes, it was. I lived right downtown, and it wasn't so much just the people, but their perspective of I guess I consider myself more hometown personality, a real people-orientated person, and that wasn't quite the image that Madison held. I guess I got into the agriculture campus down there, and it was so much nicer because people know who you are. You get involved with many of the same activities as everybody else does, and you get to know your professors really well too. And the ag campus is really close to the Lake Mendota, and it's real quiet, real calm, very peaceful. So it was a total opposite. I guess my last 2 years just becoming more and more involved with that made it much more enjoyable for me to go there as a student. If I was going into something different like chemistry or math, I might have a different perspective of Madison.
So then the adage that they used to use in the old days is once you get them down the city, how are you going to come back on the farm? Was the opposite for you?
Exactly, and I think of a lot of my friends had the same perspective too when I got done.
Now, when you go to school and you've had the 4 years and you're working in the agricultural field, what kind of things can you recommend to kids that are coming up and younger, and girls especially that are in a younger age? What would you tell them if they have even a slight interest in agriculture?
I think that you just have to explore every opportunity that you might think is interesting, and especially 7th, 8th, 9th graders that are really trying to decide what they would like to do for their future, just to give it a try. Like I said, so much of the curriculum has changed. People are getting more and more involved with the horticulture and the landscaping side of things, working with the environment, and it's not just the production side that we've seen for so many years. And not to have the stereotype in mind when they come into the classroom, that they're open and willing to try new things.
Okay. Now, if we can change gears just a little bit. Run down Alice in Dairyland as far as the night of the selection and in the process. When you first decide to run for Alice in Dairyland, what are some of the requirements you have to do?
Well, Alice is selected. Somebody a female is 18 to 30 years old, preferably with a 4-year degree from a college. And I guess when I first got the application in the mail, I knew that I needed a job since I was graduating in May. So this was really fitting into my plans well, and I was familiar with the position. I had to fill out a preliminary interview, work with getting together a sales presentation, and then after they narrowed all of the applicants down to 8 finalists, then we had the final selection up at Rusk County. That was the host to the area. And up at Ladysmith, we went through days of intensive group interviews, personal interviews. We had to do an agriculture issue speech in front of the Board of Agriculture, which is appointed by the governor. And then finally, on Friday night, they had our sales presentations. They had a nice program at the auditorium in Ladysmith, and then they announced the final winner. That was me.
It's kind of neat. Now, as you go through that night, how many people start out as running for Alice? How many contestants did they have?
Well, they had 50 applicants originally, and then they narrow it down to the 8 finalists that go through the actual interviews, the final process.
Okay. When you get down and you get selected, what kind of butterflies and that did you have as it started to get closer? And
I guess in the back of my mind, I had been working towards this goal for so many years that the last couple days it didn't feel realistic that this was the actual day that I was shooting for. And the first couple days weren't too bad. I had to do a food demonstration, and since Alice does so much educational roles, especially in the grocery store, state fair, and promoting the ag commodity, I was really not comfortable talking and cooking at the same time. I mean, how many people try to make a pizza and talk about having tomatoes and green peppers and where Wisconsin commodities fit on it? And so that was probably the biggest challenge I had. And after that food demonstration was done, it just seemed very much more relaxed, and I got into it. And then Friday, I think, just waiting, because the judging was done about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Just waiting for the final announcement was harder than the whole rest of the week. And plus then it was probably about 95 degrees with no air conditioning up there. That doesn't help either.
That's not a help at all,
No.
so no. As you get started now, and you mentioned that you're going to be at State Fair, and you'll be at Farm Progress Days, I would imagine, too. Have you been thinking about a lot of this, that you're going to be on the road a lot, you're going to be traveling a lot and that stuff, and what kind of, what you'll be picking up from different people and sources as you're out on the road?
Yes. Well, actually, I had the opportunity to do so much traveling last spring. I had an internship with an animal health company and did a lot of driving over to Minnesota, northern Wisconsin. And I got a chance to meet with so many different people from the agriculture industry, especially dairy farmers, and get to converse with them one-on-one. And if Alice has anything similar to that, not only dairy industry, but all the industries that make up agriculture, I know I'm in for a great year this next year.
You're going to have some fun, and you'll be able to, like... Now, when you go down to State Fair and Farm Progress Days, you'll be representing the state of Wisconsin, I guess, to all these people that are coming up. What kind of hints do they give you as to what you have to put across to these people?
Well, I think just the biggest key is that the opportunities are available in the agriculture industry, not only for employment, but also for use in your daily lives. And the fact that they do produce the food and the fiber that we use in our everyday lives. I think being out in the public spotlight, since this is a professional occupation that I'll be doing for the next year with the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection, I need to make sure that I'm as professional as I can be. And I know this couple days I've been here at Wisconsin Rapids, I've had the chance to work with Ethel Fanning in the trying to really polish my image, not as a beauty queen, but as a professional in the agriculture industry.
Now, does that help? Because I guess if you look back at Alice back in the days when it first got started, that's what it was thought of, was the beauty contest. Now it's a little bit different, right?
Yes, it has evolved a complete 180 in different direction, and I think that since agriculture is a business, that the Alice program has evolved to become a business along with that.
Okay. When you go out to these places and that, you know, like Miss Wisconsin, all that, they have sort of formats. You touched a little bit earlier on a format you like. You want to put out the fact that there are jobs and there are opportunities in agriculture. What other guidelines with that would you like to have as sort of like a platform as you go on?
I think that people need to be aware of how healthful it really can be to eat Wisconsin, whether that's having potatoes, cranberries, strawberries, or beef. I think that people need to be aware of the flexibility that it has to offer them in cooking, in preparation, and also that it's good for them in their everyday lives. And I think people need to be aware, too, of the stability that the agriculture industry has to offer our state as a whole. 56% of the income here in the state is ag-based. Whether, like I said, that's in the urban setting or the rural setting, it's so diversified that people need to be aware of what's out there for them.
And that's one of the things to key on and look for.
Yes.
As you get towards the end of the year that you're going to be at Alice, what have you thought about, and what are your kind of plans and your goals after that point?
Well, Alice is going to be a great stepping stone into promoting agriculture, and what better setting than in the classroom as an agriculture education teacher and FFA advisor. And even though that was my goal before the end of this year and I had a couple of job offers with schools, I still definitely plan on doing that in the future. I guess growing up through that phase and knowing all the opportunities that I had offered to me, I want to make sure that those are available to somebody else when they're coming through the class.
Okay. You bring up a good point, teaching in that, and I guess, again, it comes in the stereotype where you don't think of an agriculture teacher as being a woman. Is that one of the goals that you want to get out and express yourself to and really get out there? I guess what I'm looking at is an area, would you like to go back to Anna and teach, or do you want to go beyond that and really go into different places?
I'm open to move just about anywhere. I'd like to stay in Wisconsin, and most of my family lives here in Wisconsin. And I think that being a female ag teacher is somewhat unique. About 1/3 of the teachers here in the state are females in agriculture. But I also think that the female ag teachers are some of the best in the state. And not necessarily drive home the fact that I'm a female, but that I am a good teacher instead. I really would like to focus on that. And there's some things that it's stereotypical of female ag teachers can do better than some male ag teachers. But I think that by working together, we should be able to come through with a really solid program.
Teaching in itself in general is going to be something to be unique too, because you know, being a student, you're still a little bit just freshly out of high school and college and all that. So you've got it in the back of your mind, and you always, the adage is that you want to be different than the teachers you had.
Right.
What about yourself now? Are there teachers maybe that you want to copy as being a teacher, or are there some ways that you want to stay away from some teachers?
Well, I just got done finishing my practicum at Montello and working with the teacher there and seeing how much technology can be incorporated into the classroom. And I think that's one thing that, looking back, it's changed so much over the past 5-6 years since I've been out of high school, that I need to be aware of the opportunities that are available to use that, whether that's to, computers, satellite dishes, any kind of electronic equipment, overheads, and so on, that'll make my teaching much better in that format. And just changing it away from the old sit down, let's take some notes and talk about this later. It's really a hands-on classroom, and that's what I really want to focus on.
The hands-on experience.
Yes.
And I think a lot of aspects have gone away from that, is that you don't need the books, you need to really have the hands-on experience.
It's easy to talk about some of these things, but unless you can really do things for yourself, it's not going to matter. The same with like computer program. You can look in a book and see just exactly how a computer is programmed, but unless you can do that for yourself,
it's completely different.
Yes, exactly.
What about some memories that Jolynn has in Jolynn's short years? Because we're not going to mention Jolynn's age. That's impolite to do, but what kind of memories have you got back that you'd like to just keep and you would pass on to people?
Well, I think that growing up on a farm was quite an experience that so many people aren't aware of what it's really like. And I know in high school you think it's uncool to be from a farm. And after being down in Madison, I know it was the best upbringing that I could possibly have. And I appreciate my parents for both being there when I came home from school every day. Whether that meant training our dog, I was able to save up enough money that I bought my first horse and worked with horses quite a bit. And just the experiences that I had with my family, bonding really closely. I also had the chance to travel over to Europe with the FFA exchange program and stayed with a host family down by Munich. And that was an incredible experience that I would love to go back to Europe anytime soon and just experience not only the agriculture but the culture itself.
To get that chance all over again.
Yes.
I guess that brings up another good point. You talked about the days when you used to have to get up and milk the cows and all that. Is the responsibilities like that good?
Oh, definitely. It's changed my life completely as far as I know the responsibilities that comes along with these different areas, and the chance to really work hands-on and learn things as we talked about in the classroom. I've definitely been much more responsible when I owned my own animals, and I'm responsible for them from day one all the way to the end. And even the time scheduling too. You know, I said I didn't like getting up at 5, but when I went down to college and I was completely on my own, at least I knew that I was responsible enough to follow through.
You had to follow through on some of the things that you had set up because nobody else is there to help you.
Right. Nobody holds your hands and says, okay, it's time to get this project done, or you have a test tomorrow, you should probably study. It's completely on your own, and I definitely appreciate all the responsibility I learned growing up.
Okay. A couple final things we want to touch on, and then we're just about out of time, but you mentioned 4-H. 4-H, I guess, is one that a lot of kids hear a lot about, but they're not sure. If you had the opportunity to sell someone that's in that age from 10 on up on 4-H, what would you tell them?
Well, I would tell them that I had the chance, coming from Antigo, which is kind of a small town, to go down to Madison, to travel out to Washington, D.C. for a week and experience our government, or just meeting people up at 4-H camp and being a counselor and working with people of all ages, learning the skills that I have, working with animals and my sewing projects. And I think that being in 4-H has really taught me a lot about myself, too.
Okay, and it's got to help that way.
Yes.
The self-taught and teaching yourself is a big boost as it goes on. Has it helped you a little bit in this last 4 days as being Alice? Have you used some of those techniques?
Well, I think that being able to rely on yourself for so many things, whether that's to relax and to feel good and confident about yourself. It all comes from within. And I think that the best sellers on the New York seller list are all self-taught, how to help yourself, do it for yourself books. And I think it just shows the trend in our country.
Okay. It's kind of that way around.
Yes.
Now, you're in Wisconsin Rapids, you're only here for a couple of days. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, like I said, I had the opportunity to work with Ethel Fanning and just kind of polish the image of Alice as a professional, learn more about the area, and we're going to be able to tour the cranberry bogs here. Since I haven't been familiar with the cranberry industry, and it is such a big industry, not only here, but also in the western part of the state, and just become more familiar with Adams County and the surrounding areas.
Okay. As you came down here to work with them, what were your expectations, first of all, before you got here? What did you think it was all going to be involved in? And then so far, what has it been in the whole day?
Well, I guess when I thought about image consulting, I wasn't quite sure what to expect other than a makeover and how to apply my makeup correctly and how to look good in front of a camera. But it's been so much more than that. It's been how to relax, how to enjoy it, how to be yourself, and how to feel good about the things that you do and the things that you wear. And like I said, as a professional, as Alice in Dairyland for 1 year, I need to make sure that that image really shines through.
Shines through and comes up. Tell us a little bit here in the last few moments about some places that people can come and see Alice at that are going to be close by in the area.
Well, the first one will probably be Farm Progress Days, and even though it's towards the eastern side of the state, it draws so many people to the area. I'll be in some of the local county fairs around, working up at Wausau, Stevens Point with the potatoes and Hancock Days, the field days, and also just being done at the state fair.
Okay, now that's going to be a long stay down there, and you'll have a chance to meet a lot of people.
Well, I'll be there every day, and at 2 o'clock I'll be doing a food demonstration at the Family Living Center.
Okay. Now, do you do the same one every day?
Of
or?
course not. They like to see how much flexibility I have.
Well, that's part of the training, so you have to get that. We're talking a little bit earlier before we got started with this, that some of the things, and you had mentioned earlier, pizza and how you put into it, and you mentioned that it was probably one of your demonstrations. If you had just a few seconds just to describe to someone how you would go about making the demonstration, how do you do that a little bit?
Well, it depends upon the time frame, but for our final selection up at Ladysmith, we had 6 to 8 minutes, and we want to really stress the emphasis that this is a Wisconsin commodity that we're working with, and actually I made a beef stir-fry up there. So I worked with beef, baby sweet corn, in which Wisconsin ranks first for sweet corn processing, green peas, which Wisconsin is third in, and then also red peppers, mushrooms, and a little bit of onion. And I guess just working with those different areas in the commodities, and that it's also nutritious, it's healthful for you. And the stir fry was really easy to make, so if I would come home from work and I would have half hour to have a good meal ready, that recipe would provide all of that for one family. And I guess hitting on those areas is really key.
And it worked out kind of nice.
Yes,
so.
it did.
It helps out a little bit and goes, well, I guess we're just about out of time. I want to give you a chance for any final thoughts that you have and people that you'd like to thank. And I guess, have you had that chance to thank all these people for getting into Alice in Dairyland?
No, actually, I haven't had a real chance to thank not only the interviewers that selected me, but also my parents, my family for the support. The town of Antigo has been wonderful, and really words of encouragement helps sometime when you're not quite sure if this is the right choice that you made. But also the people that are now supporting the Alice program now that I am Alice, whether the Kettle Marine mink breeders provide me with a jacket for the year, the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection are really the driving force behind the program. And then also I'd like to thank Ethel Fanning for bringing me here to Wisconsin Rapids today in Beauty Control Cosmetics.
And that has to be a lot of help, that one.
Yes.
You mentioned the mink coat. Now that's the girl's every favorite dream, right?
Well, I guess it was quite a shock. I had never thought myself as actually being fortunate enough to wear such a beautiful mink jacket, but now here I am.
Okay. Final question, as we look at Jolynn Nagel 20 years from today, where are we going to see Jolynn at?
I'll probably in a classroom somewhere really promoting agriculture and FFA activities. Like I said, I had so many opportunities offered for me through that opportunity. I'd like to pass that on to my students, and really combining the technology, the environmental sciences, the wildlife ecology into my curriculum.
Into the curriculum. Now, you mentioned the teaching, but we have the personal side of Jolene, too. Husband and about 4 or 5 kids, or we stop after a while? Or...
I'm not quite sure on that one yet. I'm still single, so if anybody's watching.
Well, be sure you'll be getting letters from Wisconsin Rapids all the time.
Okay.
Well, we want to thank you for coming over and talking to us, and hopefully, I guess this is what, your first interview in a little bit?
Well, this is actually the first TV interview that I've had.
So it's a good way to break your teeth on
This
right
is
away,
great.
right? On
This is
local
great.
television.
Mhm.
We want to thank you for joining us today, and the best of luck for the next year, and come back and see us sometime.
I will do that. Thank you so
All right,
much.
thank you. Jolene Nagel for this edition of Jim Visits. This is Jim Walsh. Have a pleasant good day. And we got to stay and freeze.